everyone. Welcome to What's New in Aerospace. Today, the topic is the Global Positioning System and celebrating its anniversary of 20 years of full operation. Is there anyone in this room who doesn't think that GPS is part of their lives? Somebody who thinks that GPS is irrelevant to what they do on a day-to-day basis? Anyone? Well, that's good, because GPS is relevant to what you do on a day-to-day basis. My name is Martin Collins. I'm a curator here at the National Air and Space Museum and serving as host. And I will introduce our speaker in just a moment. If you look up at the slide up on the wall, I wanted to emphasize one thing before our speaker talks. This is a satellite constellation. It's the GPS constellation. You see satellites in orbit around the Earth. What does that mean? Each of those satellites is emitting a particular kind of radio wave. And each of those satellites is emitting radio waves, and those radio waves bathe every square inch of the planet. And that's important because it is in that feature of the GPS system that we are able to use GPS anywhere on the planet and for all kinds of purposes. So I want you to kind of fix this image in your mind and kind of think about that characteristic of it. If you are someone who is 20 years old or younger, you have lived with this idea, with the fact of this connection across the entire planet for your whole life. If you're over 20, this is a revolutionary moment. What happened in the mid-1990s is a change of how we do things in many, many different ways. And I think that's a good framework to kind of think about GPS. So let me introduce our speaker. He is Major Benjamin Calhoun. And I'm going to take the liberty of kind of reading my notes about his biography because his military title and accomplishments are somewhat complex. He is currently serving as Chief of Positioning, Navigation, and Timing Branch within the Space Operations Division of Headquarters Air Force, which is situated at the Pentagon. He has served as an ICBM Combat Crew Deputy and Commander for 308 nuclear alerts. You might want to ask him what that was about in the question and answer session. In 2009, he took on responsibility for overseeing the daily operations of the GPS system, and more recently was the Department of Defense's senior advisor to the National Coordination Office for Space-Based Positioning, Navigation, and Timing. Among his major awards and decorations, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Air Force Commendation Medal, National Defense Service Medal. Please welcome Major Benjamin Calhoun.
As I said, 39 GPS satellites overhead right now as of Wednesday. It's pretty amazing. That was Wednesday, but today we celebrate 20 years of having the GPS constellation fully operational. It's an amazing thing. I'm not going to give away my age by saying what I was doing in 1995, but I wasn't in the Air Force yet. That is for sure. It was a long way off for me. Since that time, GPS has absolutely become a critical part of all of our lives. Next slide. All right, just going to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I'm going to begin with a key moment in GPS history, just one day, one Labor Day weekend, And I'm going to keep it pretty brief because I really want you to take advantage of the time and navigation exhibit to answer the entire history of GPS, those questions you might have about the history of GPS. They're right above you right now, that exhibit. And for those of you out in TV land, there is a presentation that Dr. Brad Parkinson gave about 18 months ago here at this museum. And to this day, you can see that presentation on the Air and Space Museum's website. It's archived. It's about a 90-minute talk that Dr. Parkinson gives, and it's absolutely sensational. The history of GPS goes back to the 1960s, and actually a little bit before that. It's amazing. After that, I'm going to give you a GPS overview and discuss some of the military contributions, followed by the GPS civil contributions, and then just to foot stomp the importance of GPS to the nation, I'm going to talk about the governance structure that exists today, a presidential directive that I would be surprised if anyone or many in the audience knew about. Next slide. All right, this is the day, referred to as the Lonely Halls meeting, September 1st, 1973. And Dr. Parkinson was like I said, considered widely the father of GPS. Used to be an Air Force colonel, retired, and has continued his work in support of the GPS system since that time. He shared this slide with me and his words. I actually attended an event that he presented at back in February, and this one day in particular really resonated, struck home with me about where this all came from. And this, to me, stood out as one of the most important days. So here's what Dr. Parkinson has to say. 3 Department of Defense concepts had been competing in the early 1970s. In 1972, Colonel Dr. Brad Parkinson was assigned as a program manager for a joint Defense Department-wide program that would combine the best knowledge at that time. He called a meeting over Labor Day weekend, 1973, in the lonely and darkened halls of the Pentagon. Perhaps the only light came from our conference room on the top floor. Again, his words. As I recalled, we also generated a little bit of heat during our discussions. The only attendees at the meeting were about 10 young Air Force officers from his program office, 1 naval officer, a few Aerospace Corporation engineers, including Frank Butterfield. He had hand-selected all of his officers. They had masters and PhDs in engineering from leading universities. They converged on a variation of the most challenging of the alternatives that had been developed in an earlier Air Force study. 3 months later, he had convinced the Pentagon and GPS was under development. Total system interratio was retained by the United States Air Force Program Office. Basically, they were still overseeing the whole thing. With Rockwell as satellite developer, the contract was let in 6 months, and the first GPS launched 44 months later. 1978. It was about this big, not much bigger. Long time ago. Again, please go up to the exhibit upstairs and learn more about the history of GPS. It's very rich. Next slide. So GPS consists of 3 segments. The first segment that I want to talk about is the user side, the user equipment segment. All of you, I would venture to guess, at least 90 to 95% of you right now are part of the user segment right now. First time I've ever been mic'd up. So You all are part of the GPS user side, the segment right now. It's amazing. These devices, we don't go anywhere without them anymore, and they do amazing things for us. Anyone with a GPS receiver is part of the user segment, military or civil. The applications on the civil side are just as far-reaching as they are on the civil side. There are a few missions that the Department of Defense executes that GPS does not touch in some way. From aircraft ops to Blue Force tracking, knowing where the good guys are, air, land, sea, space, cyberspace. GPS touches all those areas. Then we have the space segment. As I mentioned, we have 39 satellites up there right now. The system is to provide global coverage, needs 24. They operate in 6 orbital planes, 4 satellites in each plane, and they operate in a semi-synchronous orbit. What that means is they just orbit the Earth twice a day. And with 24 required and 39 up there, the space segment is doing quite well. Then you move on to the ground segment, the operational control segment, and this is my favorite segment. And I personally have interacted with this as a GPS operator, but the reason it's my favorite is because the men and women that operate it really are the heart and soul of what provides GPS to the world. Average age of a GPS operator, 23 years old. There are around about 200 of them total. A joint regular Air Force and Reserve Air Force total force team coming together, operating seamlessly to deliver this to the world. And just a quick shout out to the 50th Space Wing, the 310th Space Wing, and more specifically, the men and women of the 2nd Space Operations Squadron and the 19th Space Operations Squadron. That's where the business, day to day, 24/7, 365, gets done to provide GPS to the world. So the MCS, or Master Control Station, is located at Schriever Air Force Base, Colorado. That's about 6 or 7 miles east of Colorado Springs. It's got 6 dedicated monitor stations and 4 dedicated ground antennas. It also has the ability to utilize the Air Force Satellite Control Network, or AFSCN, antennas that are distributed around the world. So a lot of antennas are available to 2 SOPs and 19 SOPs operators to take care of the constellation. Back in the middle part of the last decade, NGA monitor stations, or National Geospatial Intelligence Agency monitor stations, were added to the mix. And that was a significant event because what that did was provide enough monitor stations to maintain visibility on any one satellite 24/7, 365, so that if there's a problem with one of the satellites, the folks on the GPS operations floor are going to know about it, and they're going to take quick action. They also have an alternate master control station at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. Had the pleasure of deploying there a few times. It works quite well. Before I go on, you've heard the term GPS time. Yes, GPS pushes time down to all of us, and very accurately it does so. But the time that actually goes into the system before it comes to us is actually from the United States Naval Observatory master clock. And that particular clock, the alternate, which is located at Schriever, primary here in the DC area, contributes to Universal Time Coordinated, UTC time, and that is the real time for everyone in the world. GPS just does a fantastic job of getting us very, very close to that UTC time by piping it down to us via signal. Next slide. The GPS civil contributions stretch far and wide. We're going to follow my last slide with a really, really cool video that Air Force Space Command provided a little less than 2 years ago. And it's going to go into depth, that video, it's about 7 minutes. It's going to go into depth in a very, very dramatic way that shows how GPS has touched our lives. But I will just summarize this slide by saying, our nation has 16 critical infrastructures. There is not a single one of them that is not touched by GPS in some way. Some naturally more than others. For instance, communications, transportation, finance, ATM transactions. GPS, it does it all. It's amazing. Lastly, just to capture the benefit economically, recently a economic benefit study just to the nation from a couple of those critical infrastructures. Preliminary results said that annually they provide $68.7 billion worth of benefits to the nation. It's really amazing. Should be one more slide, and it is the GPS governance structure. There we go. Okay. As I mentioned, I'd be surprised if many of you know that there is national policy for GPS. The 2004 space-based PNT policy, GPS, in it, GPS is called out numerous times. It is still the heart and soul of how space-based positioning, navigation, and timing, PNT, is provided to all of us. It's very unusual to see that in a high-level document such as national policy, but it does. It's there, and rightfully so. So what that policy did, one of the things that policy did, and by the way, before I forget, if you want to read more in depth about any of this in particular, this slide, I'd encourage you to visit gps.gov and click on the governance tab. That website goes into very good depth on how this all works, and it's an amazing thing. What that policy did in 2004, one of the things was it established a National Executive Committee for Space-Based PNT. That committee is co-chaired by the Deputy Secretaries of Defense and the Deputy Secretaries of Transportation. Transportation in this committee represents all civil users. Off there to the left of the chart, you can see the other representatives, also at the Deputy Secretary level. This group convenes approximately twice a year to discuss space-based PNT matters. At the Assistant Secretary level, they have a working group called the Executive Steering Group, and the National Space-Based Coordination Office, my old office that I just came from not too long ago, acts as the Executive Secretariat for this body. The Executive Committee also has an advisory board. Not surprisingly, Dr. Parkinson is a member of that board and has been for a very long time. Down there at the bottom, you can see that they have various working groups and committees to support the National Executive Committee structure. All right, that is pretty much all I have on this slide. If you could go to the next one and begin the Space Command video.
Science, technology, engineering, and math projects brought hundreds of kids to Peterson Air and Space Museum for STEM Rocks.
So this is the third annual STEM Rocks event. It is a military child appreciation event geared towards getting the children enthusiastic about science, technology, engineering, and math.
It's going great. You know, we've had excitement every year, and it just continues to grow. And already we are almost out of T-shirts, which is huge. We're probably estimating around 2,000 people so far today. You know, I've seen a lot of really cool things. The Colorado Springs Utilities is working on natural gas, so there's some explosions with that. The Air Force Academy Falcon Club is here with some of their Falcons, and that's been popular. Balsa gliders, I don't know, pick and choose, there's tons.
This is the third year Peterson has hosted STEM Rocks, with the goal to encourage kids to find the fun in STEM and consider pursuing careers in the field. And if you missed it this year, just keep an eye out for next year's event. Senior Airman William Branch, Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado.
We have one slightly different video, or is that what you had queued up? Okay, no worries. Once again, I encourage you to visit gps.gov, and you will see the 2013 Air Force Space Command video that I really wanted you to see. And you can use your GPS-enabled smartphone to do that anytime you want. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for the Smithsonian sponsoring this event. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
We're not going to let him get away just yet. So yes, we will have a Q&A, and of course there'll also be a pop quiz on the GPS governance structure before you can leave this room. We will take questions from the audience in just a second. But I think one of the things, since you have had a long career in the military, that you might talk about a little bit is actually how GPS is used by the military.
I touched on this a bit, but aircraft ops is a big one. There's something also called a JPADS, or Joint Precision Airdrop System, that enables highly accurate cargo deliveries. Basically, drop a box with a parachute out of an aircraft, and it gets guided accurately to where it needs to go. Let's see, what else? There are handheld units that forces on the ground use to get where they're going. The GPS constellation really proved its mettle in the first Gulf War, and many of you probably remember that. The first time you could see bombs being guided to their targets. And that particular role has done nothing but grow. Precision-guided munitions get the bombs where they need to go, to the bad guys, and they help prevent unnecessary casualties as well.
Well, let's go ahead and take a question from the audience.
We're going to start with an online question. What role does accurate timekeeping play in GPS?
Time is absolutely critical. That is why I talked about the USNO a little bit. For each nanosecond in error, it equates to several feet of error to the user on the ground. So it's vital that all of the satellites are fed a fresh navigation upload, usually about once a day. And at the basic level, I encourage you all to grab a copy of the GPS poster that's free for all of you on the podium, because what that has on it is the basic answer to your question, which is, what role does time play? It's distance equals rate times time, and that formula is on that poster, and that's really the basic principle of GPS and how we get such an accurate position and navigation signal.
If I might add, I mean, it's helpful to kind of tease apart the two things that GPS does. One is it's a facility in giving you information on your location, but the other kind of information it provides is the super accurate timekeeping. And that is especially important to financial institutions. Say if you go to a 7-Eleven and you use the ATM, the timestamp that you get on there comes from, on your receipt, comes from a GPS signal. So that's how prevalent and GPS is in its different uses.
If anyone in the audience has a question, you can come over and ask. Otherwise, we have another online question coming up. What will the next generation of GPS look like?
The next generation of GPS is GPS 3, and that's going to be coming online or being delivered in the next couple years. And one of the new capabilities that GPS 3 brings is called the L1C signal. It's a new signal that none of the current satellites have yet. And what that does is allow for interoperability between the GPS constellation and the Europeans' Galileo constellation, which is their version of GPS. So that will be of benefit to the world. It's one of the new things. There are several others, but that's a big one.
I believe we have another online question. Are GPS satellites vulnerable to space debris or solar flares?
All satellites are vulnerable to objects hitting them. Haven't quite figured out how to get around that one. And yes, solar flares are bad for all satellites.
And I might just add that GPS being at a rough altitude of about 12,000 miles is above the what is typically called low Earth orbit, which is 1 to 200 miles. There's more debris at that lower level, so I think GPS is probably less vulnerable than other satellite systems.
Right. I read the question a little bit different.
Yeah.
Another online question. Are there any blind spots for GPS on Earth?
What I can say is that and you can download these products for the most part off of the GPS Operations Center website, also referred to as the GIPSOC. The poorest performance of GPS is in the upper latitudes, North and South Pole.
Okay, and I have a question as well. Recently, they added a second. Did GPS have to do anything to deal with that?
Okay, so what she's referring to is the leap second. And without going into to too much detail on what a leap second is, the answer is yes. There's a process to insert that second into the GPS system, and the notifications for that operation go out to the public and the world well in advance of it happening.
One thing I think that might be of interest to the audience, again, thinking about how GPS is completely global in coverage and completely accessible, although there are different sort of ways of different channels that have access only to certain users, but still everybody has access to some of the channels of GPS. And that means that someone in Australia, someone in Saudi Arabia, someone in Brazil all have access to this. Are there any military implications to the fact that this is generally accessible not only to the US military but to other organizations in the world?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, okay. but I'll do my best. We provide GPS to the world free of charge, and we encourage its use worldwide. as a matter of national policy. So absolutely, the national policy comes from my commander-in-chief, and we support that.
Okay, that's a good answer. Was there an audience question here? Or?
We have an online question
okay.
and then an audience question. Do GPS satellites serve additional purposes other than GPS?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. The tertiary mission of GPS is the nuclear detection system, nuclear detonation detection. That is the tertiary mission of GPS satellites. There's an additional payload on the satellites, and that's the extra mission that not many people know about.
Hi, sir. I have a quick question for you. There's a lot of little tykes around, and maybe they want to get a career in GPS and satellite transmission in the future. How does a young one go about pursuing a career in something like that?
Well, there's a couple of different options, but I'll start with the basics. Study hard, do your homework, and focus on math and science. I definitely recommend that. The STEM initiatives that the Smithsonian sponsors a few. They're important, and we need that. And then following that, studying hard, getting good grades, staying out of trouble. Then there's several paths that you can go, both on the enlisted and officer side, to become part of 2 SOPs or 19 SOPs. And there's other organizations that contribute to GPS. I just happen to be a little bit partial to those 2.
Okay. Well, let me ask one more. You've mentioned our time and navigation exhibition, which is right above us, and GPS is an integral part of that story. Another display we have here in the building is of what are called unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, including one named the Predator. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how GPS is used by these technologies that are becoming ever more important, not only to the military, but in civilian life.
GPS is important to UAV operations. There are several navigation technologies that UAVs can use, but GPS is definitely one of the important ones. I can't speak to the technical details about how it is used, but absolutely, GPS is vital to UAV operations.
Okay. Well, I think we've taken enough of Major Benjamin Calhoun's time. Please thank him. And before we wrap up, I also want to extend thanks to the Boeing company, which makes this event possible. Thank you very much.